Explain the switch up. What is this record about?
At the time, I felt like, you know, people were saying, you know, I needed a certain type of record, you know, like everything is just so serious and so hip hop. And, you know, my closest people were like, you know, I know your personality, you need to have fun a little bit. I know you love to have fun. So I kind of took what I was going through at the time, you know, meeting new people and different energy, you know, that wasn't, the transition, like you said, was just so quick, and meeting all these people and getting all this stuff, this information from these people that I grew up watching, and just certain things in my life that I was getting, and the way people change and how they were acting. I felt like I needed a new number. I was getting new money. My life was just new. So if you listen to the hook, it's all of those things just wrapped into one. But I didn't want to make that so serious where people, you know, couldn't really digest it. So, you know, that phrase, the who this phrase, all of this stuff was just going on at the time. So it just made sense. I just threw it into a record. And kind of told my personal life in between the songs. Yo Gotti was a person that I kind of always would just run into and bump into. And the same way like Nas or Lauryn Hill, his energy was just always good and positive and solid, and always gave me good advice, like keep going, I'm rooting for you, I'm with you, whatever you need. So I remember listening to the verse, sending it to him. He gave me the verse back in 2 days. Mind you, I have people that I've known my whole life, and I told them to give me a verse back, and it takes 2 years, and they're broke. So, well, at the time we were broke. I don't know their living conditions now, but we were all together, and I would just look at that, and once again, my respect level for him just shot through the roof. I just looked at him as just more than an artist, like his integrity, and just getting that verse back in 2 days just meant a lot. That kind of told me a lot about the type of person that he was. So, did that, heard his verse, I wrote another verse, put it at the end, recorded it, and that really was that. Yeah. Out right now on all streaming platforms, the switch up.
So I want to break this down a little bit. First, when it comes to Gotti, your first time meeting him, do you recall that moment?
My first time meeting Yo Gotti, I was at the label Epic Records, and you know, the label that was signed to in New York, and L.A. Reid was in the office at the time, and I just walked in there, me and my manager Jason, we walked into the office, and Yo Gotti was in there, and he was like, yo, I'm a fan of your dope, I love your stuff. That was like the very first time I met him. The second time, it was more, you know, a bigger interaction. It was more, you know, I was more comfortable with him because, you know, he had heard more music through like a close friend of mine, and wanted to bring me out on his show. He did like a white, what was it called? I forgot the name of the show, but it was at Center Stage. It's like this big show in Atlanta, and he brought me out to like perform 2 records. And yeah, that was the second time I met him. Yeah.
Now, this is a record that you had already put together, and then you sent to him for the verse. When you were creating this record, was it your intent for him to be on it originally? Was it just, I'm gonna do this solo? Maybe it was a suggestion to put somebody on it? Like how did it come from just being a record that you're on by yourself to?
I was just a fan of him, you know, and this was like, as far as like these type of records, he was like the only person that I knew that would fit this record and could give it justice. So that's why I reached out to him. Yeah.
Who came up with the beat?
I found the beat online on the internet, just going through beats on the internet. These 2 guys named Rick and Thaddeus. I think they're out of Kentucky. You know, I've been like going through their beats online for like years, like before I even had a record deal. Maybe about 10 years now. And heard the beat, wrote my verses. I wrote my verses in like 15 minutes. The second verse came so fast, I don't even know how long that took, but the first verse I know for a fact was like 15 minutes.
It was an instant vibe to the beat?
It was an instant vibe, yeah.
So the verse came first?
Yeah, the verse came first, yeah.
Hook later?
Hook later.
You always work like that?
I always work like that. Like, I feel like the hook has to match what you're talking about for the majority of the song. So, yeah, just kind of, it has to like, you know, just fit whatever the verses are talking about. So that's why I always touch on the hooks last. Yeah.
you wrote this, like physically wrote it, or
Absolutely.
or are you the freestyle punching in type of recording artist?
I could never, like, I won't say never, I have done it before, but you don't get my best work like that. You don't get the best artists, you know, like that. I feel like I never record punching in, and I never record sitting down. I hate when people do that. I feel like that's like the laziest shit in the world, you know. My voice doesn't even project when I sit down, so, you know, so I always have to stand up. I'm a real traditional writer. I can write in my phone. Sometimes I just put like keywords in my phone and come up with the rest of the line around whatever that keyword is. But I'm traditional. I have to sit down in front of a speaker with a pencil and pad to kind of get the complete thought out.
Some recording artists, they record outside of the mic booth, like right in front of the board.
Yeah,
not even in the mic booth. You seem more traditional with the descriptions of how you operate some of the things you said. So are you in the booth recording, or you like to be by the engineer in front of the board?
I'm in the booth, standing up, reading off the pad that I took my time to write this whole song. And, you know, I for one of the reasons I don't have a studio in my house, like a setup in my house, is I want to feel like I'm going to work. Like I want to get up and drive to the studio. That way I know for sure I'm going to work, because if it's in the crib, I'm just going to feel like, all right, I'm never going to get to it, or I get to it. Not never going to get to it, but I get to it later, but I never get to it. But for me, it's just always, I want to feel like I'm working for it. I want to work for it, and, you know, and if I'm going to do anything, I'm always going to give my best efforts at it, so, yeah.
Now, when it comes to getting the feature verse, this is something I always wondered, okay? Especially from a notable artist. When you get the feature back, is it something you just accept, whatever? Or if there was a problem with it or an issue, or maybe you felt like the featured artist could go a little harder, is it something you critique and maybe have some sort of dialogue, like, you know, I'd like you to go back in on this? How does that work? I always wondered.
This is just for me, you know. I don't know what space somebody in when they're recording, you know. Maybe they like the verse. I will never tell them to change what they feel like is dope, or, you know, I have my opinions about it to myself, but I never really tell a person, yo, change this. I never really know what they want to talk about, or kind of censor their voice or make them say different things. I just let them do what they do.
I see.
You know, yeah.
When you got this particular...
Especially when they're doing something for me, you know. So it's like, it just makes it easier to kind of push forward, you know, but I never try to change somebody's voice or what they're speaking about.
Also, speaking of a feature, what happens if you get the verse back and the feature you got, the verse, outshine your verse? It was a better verse than yours.
Oh, you just got to live with that. If their verse is better than yours, you got to live with that. I'm old school rules, like, if your verse is better than mine, you just had a better day than me, you know. But we're going to keep doing records, and at some point, or the next song, or 3 songs later, I'm going to have a better verse. But I can never go back and change my verse. I feel like that's, you know, you got to just live with it. There was a interview where Big Sean was like, I think it was the Control record, when he said Kendrick, I think Kendrick rapped his verse. He sent it to Kendrick with his verse already on it. And he was like, man, I could never go back and change my verse. So, you know, that's just where I'm at with it. And I respect him so much for that. That was dope. And his verse was dope, you know. So, yeah, I can never go back and change my verse. You just got the best of me. You know?
Some artists do.
Yeah, I know.
And some artists, if they don't change their verse, like you had mentioned, they may add an additional verse to balance out.
To balance it out, yeah. I'm not opposed to that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to adding another verse, but changing the one that I had because I felt like yours was better. Nah, I just gotta take that. I gotta suck that up.
When you did send over the song to Gotti, did you send your verse like how Big Sean sent it to Kendrick, or is it like hook, open verse, and he just does him?
I sent the first verse so he can get the idea of where I was going, and you know, he came back with the second verse 2 days later, and then I wrote the second verse after his. But I already had a verse on it before he even got it, the hook and everything.
From start to finish, how long did it take for this record to complete in its entirety? From the moment you got the beat till, okay, the song is mastered, it's done, it's ready to go.
I would say a week.
Very fast.
Yeah, I would say a week. Yeah. Probably the quickest song on this project. Everything else was like very thought out, you know.
The Dreaming Out Loud project.
Yeah, the whole Dreaming Out Loud project, yes.
Happy with the outcome of the record?
I'm happy with the outcome of the record. And it just, you know, I'm in a space where like, I used to always wonder why like people's mixtapes were always harder than their albums. And there's so much business behind putting out an album. I can see why you have so much freedom with a mixtape. But it took the experience of going through putting out an album to understand why people's mixtapes were better. When you're putting out an album, there's so many restrictions, and you kind of know how much doper your album could be if everything would just go the way you want, but it doesn't, you know, and you gotta just live with it. But I used to just always wonder that, like, why is this mixtape better than this album? Like, you're supposed to put your all into your album, but with an album, there's restrictions, so you have to look at it like that, and that's how I look at it. But things change at the last minute. People don't want to do records. Samples don't get cleared. You know, you got to rewrite different things, and it's just so much that go into it. And some things you don't even get to finish, and they might take a record off. So I just know how much better it could be, but it's still, I still feel like it's a classic album. I'm just a perfectionist in that way, but yeah.
When you say it's a classic album, which album are you referring to?
Dreaming Out Loud.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, okay, you're happy with the outcome of the record. The record, it was finished in a week. How long?
The Dreaming Out Loud record.
No, I'm sorry.
Switch Up.
The Switch Up.
Yes.
Okay. The song, The Switch Up. Back to The Switch Up. Okay. You finished that in a week.
Yeah.
How long before you actually release it from the time it was finished?
Whew. Man. How long did I actually release it? Almost 7 months. Yeah.
7 months later.
7 months later, yeah.
Who'd you premiere it through?
I premiered it through Complex. Yep. Complex magazine.
What's the feedback been to the record so far?
For me, just because I'm like super honest, you know, you have people that love it and people that relate to it, people that haven't, you know, heard of me, they are drawn more into me. Like I have like a bunch of new fans just from the record. But like my hardcore day one fans are like, what are you doing? Like we can clearly see, you know, the compromise, which is dope. Like the record is polarizing, so it's like this balance. But it shows you that I can also draw people in while still keeping, you know, these people that were with me since day one. But this was like the first offering, so it kind of like, well, not really the first offering. I also released a record before this called 96 Bulls. And it goes back to that balance, you know, just rapping hard, like every line is a line that's going to grab you on the first offering. And, you know, you have this record that my diehard fans aren't going to love, but it's still drawing more people in to know who I am. But I feel like when they get the full body of work in its entirety, they're going to love it. Yeah.
The music video is out.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Was the music video shot and completed before you released the actual song?
It was. We shot the video in December.
Okay.
And we released it April, what? I think April 1st, something like that. Yeah.
So you had this in the can for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you had a chance to perform the record yet?
I was performing it before it was even released.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was performing the record on the Nas and Lauryn Hill tour, and the response was great. So I just kept pressuring people to like, to put it out because, man, it was out 7 months, like I said, but before that, it was out. I had it in the can 3 months while I was performing it on tour. So I was just really excited about getting it out. Everything came together so well. That's why I always, like I said about God, just his timing of everything and placing everything in the right place for me is, you know, is the greatest thing that can happen for me. So when things don't happen on my time, I always know that it's for a reason. So I'm just patient.
Now I'm curious why you would perform a verse or a song on tour if people aren't familiar or haven't heard it yet. What would get you to do something like that?
I'm a fairly new artist, so I'm like extremely comfortable with that. You know, so when I get on stage, it's a lot of material that they haven't heard, that they might love, that might bring them in and go find, you know, earlier work. So I'm always performing stuff that I've been on tour with Dave East, which is, you know, I would say a different crowd from Ab Soul. And you have Nas and Lauryn Hill, who are these legendary people. So I feel like it's a different audience, you know what I'm saying? So when I go out and perform, it's all new material, but it's all different people that might love what I'm doing. So I feel like it's, you know, it's all new music that I'm doing. It's all new material. You just got to get out there and do it. You never know what sticks. Yeah.
Working with Yo Gotti, what's the biggest advice he's given you, or the most important thing you learned being around him at this point?
I would say that the thing that he enforced with me is always be humble. You know, never let people see you sweat. I think that's like the most important thing I learned from him, because when I see him, he's like the most humble person, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's dope. I'm like that as well. So when I see that and I see where he's at in life, you know, I just know that I'm doing the right thing. I just got to keep going and keep fighting along this road, because the road that I travel is less traveled. I feel like even when you look at social media, man, I feel like a lot, as bad as they say they want the positive things, I feel like most people only respond to negativity and just ignorance, you know. So the road that I travel is less traveled. I have to get everybody that's looking this way to look back and say, oh, he's back here doing this. Like, so if I can, even day by day, if I can get one person to turn around, you know, I'm doing my job. If I can inspire one person and say, oh, this record changed my life, or, you know, thank you for writing this record, man. I needed that to be said because I don't have a voice, you know, and I feel like I'm doing my job.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think negativity and ignorance are placed on a higher pedestal?
I just think because it's pushed way more than the positive things. And just with anything in life, you know, everybody's human, you know. I feel like, how can I put this? I feel like when it's something positive, people don't like to say, oh, that's dope. You have very few people that say, oh man, that's dope, but more than anything, you're gonna have a bunch of people saying, man, whatever, man, I'm back to this because it's more entertaining, and that's dope, but I didn't do it, so I don't care. You know, and I feel like with that, that's like the foundation of it for me, from what I see, and then the negative things are being pushed onto you, you know, with all these different rappers that we have that are constantly doing the same thing, so you see it, and every day you're just being brainwashed, you know.
Do you think this negativity or ignorance is pushed because people like it and want it, so people push it? Or do you think people are pushing it and it's just accepted, whatever it is that they are pushing?
I think it's just entertaining. I think it's just entertaining, and people like to be entertained, you know. I think we're like in a weird time where everything is rough, you know, and especially if you're a person of color, everything is just rough, and people like, they got to get on their phone to like get outside of their everyday life and to be entertained, and that's a lot of people's joy. It's like a drug in a sense, so they have to be on that to kind of get out of the stuff that they're going through every day, you know. Even me, like, I see stuff when I'm down, I get on social media and laugh. I'm not exempt from any of that stuff, but I think that's what it is. I really think it's both. It's being pushed and, you know, people like it. That's why it's being pushed. Yeah.
It's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Exactly. Exactly. But, you know, with the exception of few people, man, you know, that are groundbreaking people and, you know, pushing the culture forward and pushing the envelope forward, you know. We just need more of that, you know. I think it went from the drug dealer rap to people who were on drugs, and, you know, the cycle just flipped, and hopefully it tilts again to where, you know, not even like drug dealer rap, just people that are actually saying something and pushing a positive agenda, you know. I just use something I heard when I say drug dealer and fiend, but it makes sense to me. because at some point people, that was cool, you know, to be the drug dealer and say certain things. They were, but when the Fiend has the ball in his court, it's like the game just goes crazy. The game just goes wild, and it's sad because, you know, I look at it like too, you know, yeah, you're making your money now, you're doing a whole lot of things now, but this was something for people to escape and talk about the situation when it was first created. So now that you have the ball in your court, you're tearing it down. You know, you're getting your money, but you're still tearing it down for the people that's going to come after you. And it's not a whole lot of options in the world. You know, we have to fight. Like, people like me have to fight like 10 times as harder to be accepted as, you know, the next rapper. Just because of the agenda that I'm pushing. And I'm okay with that, but I don't know, man. We could be here all day just talking about this. I don't really want to get deep into that.